There's an electrode. Your chair will send an electric
I'll
shock.
try not to hold the pen unless I need to. My weapon of mass destruction. Actually, we have more people than I thought she said. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here at Innovate Newport today. I'm Molly Williams, the Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to point you to Kevin Buck back there. Kevin, wave. He's our community manager, and we have Liam, who is our intern. So thank you to you both. Before we begin, I'd love to just remind you, if you haven't been here, we have restrooms out the hall, women's on the left, men's on the right. We have a green cooler back there that has some waters and beers. Please feel free to grab what you like. We have some popcorn and M&Ms. Just feel free to get up. This is very casual, so it's okay if you get up in the middle to get a beverage or whatever you need. Today, this is the 7th of 9 of our speakers sessions this summer. So the Blue and You Summer Speaker Series is 9 sessions. This is number 7. I'm really excited to have our panelists here today. I'm first going to introduce our MC, really, our host, Wendy Mackey, who is the Director of Workforce and Foundation Development at Marine Retailers Association of Americas. And Wendy is going to introduce the rest of the panelists. So thank you to you all for being here. We're really excited to have you.
Thank you. Thank you, Molly. So thank you all for being here as well. Brian just made a challenge to the room. Anytime anybody says blue, you have to drink.
Oop.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Yep.
Does water count?
Sure.
If you want. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So my name again is Wendy Mackey. I'm so excited to be here. I have a big fondness for the boating industry here in Rhode Island and blue economy, and have done a fair amount of work in the realm of workforce development. And hi, nice to see a lot of friendly faces in here. So this is going to be a discussion. We're having a conversation up here. It's not going to be a typical panel type thing. We are going to ask to reserve the questions at the end, but in about 45 minutes, we will get there or sooner. I will introduce the speakers briefly, but I do want it sort of to come out organically too, and you have their bios right in front of you, so you can read that yourselves. Brian Williams works he's the Chief of Staff at Roger Williams University in Bristol. Joe Mariani is the Regional VP for Safe Harbors, Marinas. And Steve Heath is Notarius. I don't even need to explain who he is. He runs Fab Newport. So I'd like to kick off the discussion, sort of getting to know you and your work a little bit, guys, and how it relates to the blue economy and blue jobs. So we'll start with you, Brian. I've always known Roger Williams to be a very community-oriented. I know that they're involved in economic development and workforce development initiatives across the state, really. And I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about how and why you respond, RWU, Roger Williams, responds to and reflects career pathways in the blue economy.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Responding to what's happening around us is, I think, something that's really important for higher education in general, and something that Roger Williams tries to do. At its heart, we're trying to provide opportunities and show opportunities to our students for when they graduate. And for them to see how their learning can get them where they want to go in a career or making a difference in the world, we have to do that by being connected around us. If we're not connected with industry, our students aren't going to be prepared for jobs after they leave us. So there's the selfish need for our students, but also as an institution to connect. And I think over the years, Rhode Island, as the ocean state, has always had connections to attracting people to live here, learn here, work here, that care about the ocean. And I think we see that in our students. So across all the majors we offer, 50 majors, 8 schools of study, the ocean and where we are has informed the types of partners we have and the majors we offer. So it's not biology. We have marine biology. We have an aquaculture program that's really linked with the oyster industry. The law school with us has a marine affairs institute, and they understand maritime law. So I think there's a great texture that I really love about Roger Williams, that it's not come for a bachelor's degree, get an English degree, and wonder what you're going to do with it. It's you come and you're understanding architecture with us, but thinking about coastal design, sea level rise and what you do. And you just see traces of blue in each of our majors, and I'd love to answer questions and share examples. But I think across every major, that's what we see. So connecting with the boating industry, with ecotourism, U.S. Sailing's national headquarters is on our campus. It just really informs all the connections I think we try to have.
Just a quick follow-up to that is, I know you've worked at several different universities and post-secondaries. Is that typical, that so community-oriented for a post-secondary school to be so connected?
It's interesting that I think other places where I've worked, those connections exist, but there isn't a common theme across them, right? So engineering will connect with what's around it. Schools in Florida connect with aerospace and NASA. But for us to be able to give examples across business, engineering, architecture, law that all lean towards ocean economy work, that's been unique from what I've seen.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it. Steve, you know I'm an incredible fan of your work. I kind of think of Steve as the youth development guru. Anybody, if I ever have a question, I go to Steve about it. And I think, I tell them that you really truly understand the meaning of living education and alternative learning, but it's so much more than that. Can you give us a kind of a flavor for some of the types and traits of programming you do at Fab Newport?
Yes, I take umbrage.
Credit cards?
No, umbrage is the word with alternative learning. So we do a lot of hands-on learning in school and out of school year round. Today we had kids surfing, cycling, hiking, farming, making music, creating dances. So alternative learning, I would say, is the factory model of education that we're using right now, where we basically lock kids in a building from the age of 5 to 18 and expect them to pop out and know what to do. But for most of our civilization as human beings, we've been out working with people in community settings. So I just want to actually riff off of what Brian said. So most careers, most people develop their careers by relational. So, you know somebody, your mother or father's a doctor or a dentist or a farmer or whatever it is, and you pick up on that kind of stuff. So when I think of the blue economy, I think of all the kids who went to the beach today, and maybe they went sailing or they went surfing. We have kids surfing today too. It's like, how do we then connect those kids when they're in middle school and maybe high school to the people who are doing that work, and they develop the relationships, and then they can grow into this blue economy in a way that's kind of seamless. But to expect them to pop out at 18 or 22 and just say, I want to work in the blue economy. What does that even mean? But they're ready to go when they're 5.
Yeah.
Walk down the beach and watch those kids playing on the water. They're all about the blue economy.
Well, and I think in Newport, we're such an enigma here, where all the second graders learn how to swim. That's,
It's a
pretty much
beautiful thing.
unheard of anywhere else in
Yeah.
the world, I think. Well, not in the world, but in our world, So
Yeah.
I think we're really lucky that way. I also, I saw your LinkedIn post when you pushed out the message on this event. You were saying, about the scientists?
Right.
Go ahead, say it.
Right. So, why aren't there some scientists, walking along the beach on a Sunday, just watching the kids and just starting to ask them questions and engage them and say, hey, do you want to learn more about science? Go to the Save the Bay Center, or, do these kinds of things. And
Meeting the kids where they are.
meeting the kids where they are. Exactly.
We do that actually, running an association or working with small businesses. You go to where they are. You don't expect them to come to you to help them. You go to them.
There you go.
Captain Joe. So he is a captain as well as a regional VP. I've known Joe for a while, since about 2010. I did the research. We worked together at Clean the Bay, which was large marine debris removal from Narragansett Bay and the surrounding waterways. How was that? Was that right on? Yeah, it was. Yeah. So Joe's been in the marine industry for a long time, whatever, in the blue economy. And I want to know, when did you know that you were going to become a part of the blue economy? When did you think about being in the marine industry?
I always, I jokingly say that it's all that I know,
Yeah.
but it's close. That's not much of an exaggeration. I grew up not far from here in Connecticut, and my parents were not in the blue economy, so to speak, but we lived in a coastal town, and I spent a lot of time, down around the docks, working at tackle shops and hanging around charter boats until they'd let me mate on them. And my parents made this really poor parenting decision when I was in middle school. The rest of the class, I remember as in 8th grade, they were going to Washington, D.C. for a week. And I don't know why they let me convince them into this, but I asked, instead of going on a class trip, if I could just stay and work at the docks for the week and haul boats.
There you go.
So to your point, that was the experiential learning. There's a small dock with one guy who worked there who's kind of a pseudo grandfather type figure to me, and I stayed there and hauled boats, and that's all I've, other than a brief stint in pizza making for about 3 months, sophomore year of high school. I've just worked on boats ever since, and it's kind of been a natural evolution. So.
And you went to college.
Yep, I went to URI for marine affairs, which I enjoyed quite a bit. And again, it was one of these, to your point, I didn't exactly know why or what it was, to be honest, when I enrolled in it. I just saw marine and boat and went for it. There was a half a second I was going to go up to Vermont to go be an English major. And my father, I was going to go up to St. Michael's, and I wanted to be a high school English teacher, so I could have summers off to fish.
That makes sense.
There was a
now.
plan.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
my father had pointed out to me that he wasn't going to drive 6 hours up to Vermont to get me every time the tuna were biting. So I might want to think about a different school. So that's how I ended up in Rhode Island.
Nice. You mentioned experiential learning, and Steve, that's kind of what you do. Can you tell us a little bit about your summer programs in Newport and some of the elements that help prepare young people for careers?
Yeah. So what we think about is developmentally, when the young people enter middle school, they're ready to explore and they want to get out. But a lot of the kids who grow up in the north end of Newport or may not have a lot of resources, they've never even been to Salve Regina. They may have never been to Second Beach. Some of them don't know how to swim. They've never been on sailboats. So we have a program with 100 kids. We have 10 learning teams in the areas I described, whether it's fishing, surfing, sailing, farming. And so we break them up into groups, and we have the middle school kids are out and they choose 3 2-week experiences. And then the high school kids who we pay serve as navigators. And so the learning teams go out with one of our staff members and go out and explore and start to, figure out what it is they want to do. I had a kid half an hour ago walked up and said, "Steve, I want to meet an actor," so that's not exactly what we do, but what the key to it, all of it, is to get to know the kids and develop the relationships with them. So they, you spend 6 hours with a group of 8 or 10 kids, you get to know them, you get to know where their interests are. So we'll hook Michael up with an actor so he can learn more about that. We have an architect coming into the lab on Tuesday.
Oh, for the guy you told me about the other day.
For the guy I told you about the other day.
Steve told me that he was asking a young person, what does he want to do? What's he interested in? He's like, oh, I really love architecture. And Steve's like, nobody, he's like, oh, did you tell him? Did you tell anybody that you wanted to do this? No, he didn't tell anybody. So if Steve didn't ask him, nobody would have known.
So we haven't, so we just try to build on their interest. So that's what we do in the summertime. And then during the school year, we have after school program. We went some in-school program. We had a focus primarily on technology. Now we look at as positive youth development. We want every child to have a positive future vision grounded in their emerging competencies, make sure it's connected to their identity, and they have the confidence to pull it all off. And then they have the people that can help them scaffold what it is they want to do. Without people, we got nothing.
Yeah, you had said learning teams.
Learning teams.
Is it like a designated, like there's this many in them and they all have these jobs, or is it sort of just like?
Well, so we have
like
so Orlando heads the golf team.
Mhm.
Sam and Sam head the farming team. So
Okay.
So we have adults who are in charge of a learning team, and then the kids either cycle through a learning team or some kids want to stay on the same learning team for the whole summer. So that's when we think about learning teams. It's a way to put people with diverse interests together who want to learn a common thing.
Nice. Love it. And Brian, I've been lucky enough to have hosted a couple interns from Roger Williams at Rhode Island Marine Trades Association. One of them, by the way, owns her own business now. She's in marketing. She's very successful in the marine industry. And I wondered if you could tell me a little bit about internship requirements, or however you want to call it, at Roger Williams.
It builds great from Steve's comment about scaffolding, and it's a great word.
It is a great word.
From high school to career or high school to college or a certificate, the pathways that you let students see earlier helps them make good choices each step of the way. And I think internships are one piece of that puzzle. So for Roger Williams, each year our students graduate. 85% of our seniors this past year graduated with more than one major. Right? They're pulling a major and a minor. They're doing double majors because they're seeing what they want to do and they're assembling the pieces of education to get them where they want to go. And experience, we provide a lot of experience on campus, but then in the community helps a student really affirm it's what they want to do, because classroom learning itself, unless it's applied, doesn't get you where you want to go. It's the teacher getting into a classroom and saying, nope, I thought I wanted to be a teacher, but no.
Yeah.
When they get in there, or a doctor who doesn't like blood, then they may want to become a different career path. So internships are just a deeper, richer experience for a semester to really affirm what someone wants to do. And I think these ties to getting experience, finding what you're passionate about. College and a higher education degree fits in when you say, I care about the ocean and I want to make a difference. So what are my pathways to that? And then we can say, if you know you want to be an engineer, here's how you can think about offshore wind and renewable energy and the type of engineer you can become. If you're thinking about, you're really good with data, well, big data, and we have a partnership with the Narragansett Bay Estuary Program. So if you want to understand sea level rise and do research that helps the ocean or informs policy, be a political scientist and care about the ocean. So it's the blending of the things you love together that I think an internship clicks for a student to say, this is what I'm good at, it's needed in the world, and then it just creates that pathway towards a career that they're happy with, and that's what we get to do year after year at the campus.
Very nice. I love it. Joe, so you had mentioned, you brought up the topic of experiential learning just now, but I'm wondering, like,
He lived it.
yeah, well, I mean, what's your formal education? And you told us what your formal education is, but what kind of education on the job or formal do you think you've relied on most, or how have you learned best?
So I think what Brian was saying about internships is key, and I think the big part of that isn't just the internship. You know, I did a few internships throughout college with Harbor Masters, things like that, and then I worked in the nonprofit world for a while. But I see the internship really as the vehicle to mentorship, and I think that's the bigger piece of it. You know, doing the Marine Affairs program at URI was great, but there's so many different ways you can go in it. And I think without mentorship or some guidance, you can kind of get lost in it, just like any program. You know, I have a lot of, my wife Sarah did the same program. She went the municipal route. I went nonprofit originally, and then kind of worked my way into the marinas. A lot of people, you know, go different ways with it, whether it's environmental, working with GIS, but the key to that is getting involved with a good mentor. And I think that's where the internships come into play. And I know, you know, the same thing. That's how Sarah got connected with the Harbor Master in Newport. And that's, you know, I didn't stay necessarily in the Harbor Master route, but having that mentorship, somebody in the industry, it helped me direct me into the way I was going. So I think that's, you know, that's a crucial vehicle for people to get where they're going.
Especially with hands-on learners.
Yeah.
So what about as an employer? I mean, you work trying to find people. Do you guys at Safe Harbor, do you accept interns, or do you look at that kind of experience favorably? Like when people come to you having had it?
Absolutely. And that's something that I think, you know, we're trying, you know, working together with our workforce development team who I work closely with. because that's a mission kind of near and dear to my heart. But that's something that all of us in the company, especially in private industry, can get better at. Is, making sure that we're identifying the young talent, like you said, is not waiting. There's always been this, I guess, mindset of waiting for that eager person, that go-getter, to step forward and say, I want more, which is phenomenal. But do some interviews of your own, and that's where I'm trying to, lead us to right now is, talk to the person who's been working in the yard, has been a good worker for 4 years and has been, steady, reliable, and, ask them if they want more. Don't wait for them to come to you. And I think it's the same philosophy that Steve said about, talking to the kids is, if you don't ask them, you might not ever find out.
Yeah.
So that's,
They might not know.
yeah.
And I think the internship thing is important. And a mentor of mine said, sometimes, I might want to be a harbor master and work with your wife, but it's sometimes the content doesn't even matter. It's the person that makes the difference, so it's important. Who's that confidant? How can you find that person that you can trust to help you, scaffold your life?
That's something with, being involved with RIMTA and with RINPAF, kind of the, young professional group. That's something that I don't think we've honed in quite yet, but has been a mission we've been talking about for a while, is within the industry having to connect a better vehicle for connecting mentors and mentees. And that's, I think that's an important mission.
Can I make a shameless plug?
Yes.
All right. So we have a platform called Be Unbound so we're collecting information. So the wannabe actor, Michael, I got his information. I mean, I know him anyway, but now my job is to find an actor who he can connect with. And then that actor will go into the database, and then we'll kind of broker an original conversation, whether it's in person or virtual. So we can build that up. And then anybody who's sitting with a young person who says, oh, let me see it. Maybe I know a captain or, a chef who sails the world or whatever. And then they can start to have these conversations, whether they're in person or virtual.
There are chefs that sail the world. So,
Yeah.
and we do have them that live
They're
here.
right here.
I know, they're right here.
Yeah.
Another part of the blue economy that probably isn't talked about too much. There's so much,
Right.
of
What a
it.
great thing to do in your 20s, right? Just sail the world and cook.
Yeah. Well, kind of my next question sort of is around, like, what does it take to work in the blue economy and or to be successful in it? And Joe, when you're looking to hire a person, what are the traits or characteristics or hobbies you're looking for in a person?
I always, from a pure employer standpoint,
Yes.
got
Got to put that hat on.
Yep, to put that hat on, I'm looking for attitude, work ethic, trainability. I'm not really looking necessarily, depends on the role, but generally speaking, I'm less concerned with skills. I'm more concerned with, number one, are you gonna fit with the team? Are you gonna be pleasant to work with? Are you fun? Are you excited? And then are you reliable, honest, all the stuff that comes with a good work ethic, and then the trainability. Can you are you gonna be able? Are you interested in learning? Are you open to learning? And and focus on being able to retain it. And so those I think are the core skills. And I would take somebody who has those three things over somebody with 20 years of experience who was missing any one of those, particularly the attitude, because we spend way too much time at work not to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have
Yeah. Agreed.
you have to be fun to work with.
Yep.
Yeah.
Steve, I'm sure you have something to say. to that.
Well, most of you probably read the paper or, social emotional learning. There's a national crisis, right? There's a mental health crisis for kids. Kids aren't, and maybe adults too. They're not physically well, maybe mentally well. And we believe you don't teach social emotional learning by talking to kids. You get them out and you live and you meet people and you realize how to navigate situations and how to have fun and how to cooperate. And so that's why we like to get kids out in the community when they're young, so they begin to just know what it's like to function. I got into a heavy debate with a 15-year-old girl about pricing an order that she wants to make, but it's only because she's been out working with different people that she can like stand up for what she believes. I was like, oh man, this is going to be tough.
So how do you know when somebody young who you're working with is kind of like ready for that next step, ready for that work, or ready for whatever?
That's a really good question. Somebody asked me that 2 days ago. And what happens this one girl I'm thinking of, she's been in our program since 5th grade. So she's ridden her bike all over Newport. She's been all over Jamestown. She's done all these things. And so she's used to walking into all different kinds of spaces. So she knows she sees what it means to network, right? So there's a point in time when the kids take it on their own. And she came in the other day and she said, oh yeah, I bumped into the woman who does blah, blah, blah for the Rhode Island Council for the Arts. And I was thinking about getting an internship with her so I could cruise around all the state and see, what's going on with artists. So, so the middle school kids need the experiences because they're wide open. But then as the kids move into high school, then they're more interested in the human relationships, right? And then they're ready to dive deeper into a topic, but it's the people that they meet that they begin to see, it's Wendy or it's Brian or it's Joe. And they ideally they begin to do it on their own. So you never know. For one kid, it's going to be a year. For another kid, it might be 4 years, and it depends. But the earlier that we start working with them, the easier it's going to be.
Yeah. Brian, my question for you is unless you wanted to react to that, my question for you is a little bit angled a little bit differently, because I know that, I wonder how Roger Williams really formulates a curriculum that does react to the industry itself, the blue economy, or whatever occupation you're actually training for.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it is listening. At its simplest, if we find graduates in a certain major aren't getting jobs, we have something that's broken we need to fix. Outside of the blue economy example, a number of years ago, all the accountants in the world were saying students should have 150 credits, so a bachelor's degree plus another 30 to sit for the CPA exam. So, hey, all colleges in the country, if you want to have a good accountant, get a job, 150 credits. And all colleges across the country started folding an MBA and let's get your master's in. So 30 credit MBA. 4 or 5 years ago, they're like, we don't care what the credits are, just have them hit the 150. So it shifted everyone's thinking, and students were saying, well, let me get the advanced placement credit in high school. If I can get credit, let me just get the credit, because then accountants were saying we need them quicker, don't keep them for 5 years. So it's just one example of we need to listen in each industry. A lot of industries are regulated by standards. If those standards change, what students need to learn changes. And sometimes it might be you don't need a bachelor's degree to get a job in this field. You only need an associate's degree. So it makes us look differently. How do we deliver an associate's degree or a certificate that a student needs? Or how do we bundle a certain competency or soft skills into the degree path so students have it before they go? And we do that listening. So I think we have over 150 alumni around 2 areas in the sciences and in our real estate and our architecture school that are sort of a board of advisors. So our alums who are in a field come back, they're in the field, they know the education they had, and they can say, here are the gaps. In my first couple of years, I got overlooked for a promotion because I didn't have this. Add that in, make sure your students do this. So we're constantly calibrating an elective or telling students in this major they should have a minor. And so, engineering majors at Roger Williams all graduate with a computer science minor. It's built into what they need, and that foundation of the technical, we just built into it. So it's not just all math, not just all engineering. And we're doing that now with Blue. So all these different career paths, we're constantly supporting the oyster farms in the state. And if someone is wanting to get into aquaculture, what do they need to learn with us? And how is that going to create that next level scaffolding from internship experience, connections in an industry, and then they can see, here's what I can do at 4 years at Roger Williams and where it's going to get me.
Yeah, and we had I didn't realize earlier when we were talking that there is more than just a bachelor's degree available, and it spurred a little bit of a conversation about standardized credentialing or badging and that sort of thing. And I wonder if you could just kind of talk a little bit about that.
at Roger Williams, 8 schools of study. We have a campus in Providence, and we do everything from high school dual enrollment credit. In the city of Providence, we're doing driver's education because no one else was doing it, and we raised our hands. So we're teaching driver's ed in the city of Providence. And we do micro credentials, like mini certificates, associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, master's in the School of Law. And I think different than college is a bachelor's degree and you're going to take it and like it, how we break it apart so the student can see the right pathway. If you're planning to get into this industry, get an associate's degree and get into working. And if that is going to help you and then you want to come back later, what learning did you gain on the workplace that we can credential? You know, if you run, you know, the books at a marina for a couple of years, that's kind of equivalent to a finance course or a management course. So we're credentialing work experience. And just those pathways, I think we're fairly nimble with our students that, to the point before, like learning happens anywhere. And so how we work with that, meet a student where they are, beach, wherever, and get them where they want to go, not over-educate them. It's just sort of this just-in-time learning and balance of applied learning and work experience that everyone's journey is different, but the mentoring along that path is what I think is the key.
Yeah, and Steve, I know you've got stuff to say about badging because I think it was like 5 years ago or whatever ahead of the curve, you were talking to me about getting badging going so that kids could be incrementally, you know, rewarded and carry that knowledge with them, sort of like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts do. It's similar. Do you want to say anything about that?
It's still a challenge. That's what I'll say. Yeah, because when you get to higher ed, you can definitely see where it pays off. But for the younger kids, it's like the intrinsic motivation, the fact that they're having a quality experience is what matters the most. So if you're talking to a 12 or a 14-year-old, like they just want to do it. So we go back and forth and we've experimented with all different kinds of things. But I think as a country or a state or whatever, we need to arrive at some competencies around reading, writing, and math and other areas that we can all agree on so kids can be liberated and say, I've got this. Let me out of here. I want to go. No, I don't want to go to Washington, D.C. I want to go on the boat or whatever it is. That's awesome that you did that. You know, but how many kids would have rather done something else and ride on an 8-hour bus in Washington and, you know, shack up on a motel with a bunch of kids having a water fight? It sounds pretty fun, but
In retrospect.
yeah, in retrospect, but you know what I mean? It's just like there's people, but people don't know, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that we all have to get organized on. And I want to learn more about what Brian's doing, and we should be able to connect to it because there's 8th graders or 11th graders who are capable of earning a credential in something that's going on at Roger Williams.
Well, and breaking a degree into pieces that you can take parts of them or feel you're getting recognized and accomplished along the way. You know, that's how video games work. That's how frequent flyer mile programs have changed. Now it's like you can board early now. Like you feel sense of accomplishment as you go. And whether you're in a workplace or in higher ed, that sense of like you've just leveled up, right? So the whole point of badges is like you've proven this competency and you gain these 7 competencies, and a business can say you're eligible for promotion now. Instead of get a degree, it's you need better public speaking skills. We need you to learn how to, you know, do these types of repairs. You can break things to the relevant, where colleges tend to get critiqued of like that's too much for the job that I wanted to get into. So right sizing it, I think, is something all sides of this can do. And that dialogue of like, what does the industry need and how do we bend a little bit instead of you're going to get 4 years, you know, 5 classes a semester, 8, you know, 4 years. That's the model that's breaking. And that's what people I think are pushing back against a lot. And that's what we're trying to meet.
Now, do you feel like you guys are kind of pushing the envelope on this, or are you following a lead from, you know, another university, or?
The bigger universities are pushing hard on this, but if you look like the Southern New Hampshire universities of the world completely disrupted the model. Google and other places are saying, we'll do certification, learn it on your own. You don't need to do the big 4-year thing. And I mean, we take our cues from community colleges, from certificates, from online schools and listen to industry. And I think we're kind of picking the best here and here. Law's not changing. An undergraduate degree and a law school degree is going to be a thing for a while. I think that's not going to change, right? But are there other industries where start working out of high school, have a good high school internship and mentor and start working? And then if along the way, we can credential that, and then you see a pathway towards further education. If you want to open your own business someday, learn other skills. Only 20% of students nationwide do the 18 to 21-year-old come out of high school, go to college mode.
How many percent?
20%, 80%,
Wow.
80% of higher ed are gap year, stopped out, stopped in, go back to school later. So when a college only focuses on that 4-year path, 1 in 5 people that are doing what we offer we're reaching.
Joe, they both said it. Industry credentials, and it, of course, everything they said to me I thought of like apprenticeship and learning on the job and on-the-job training. What do employers in the industry want, in the boating industry anyway?
So I don't know if I should.
You can say whatever you want.
I'm trying to think of, I don't know if I can say what we want as much as what we're trying to do for the employees is that concept of badging. We've never had this in the marine industry with any level. You go look at, I guess EB or something like that, I should consider part of the marine industry, but that's really more of a formal trade. And you see, that journeyman, apprentice, level 1, level 2, they have that kind of, that badging, that career progression. We've always been behind on that. And, when I see the marine industry, I guess, from my standpoint, in the marina side, things like that. And that's, so again, that's something I've been working within our company. We started with, the Rhode Island Apprentice program, and we've had a couple of apprentices go through that. But, we need to do more with it, and we need to do more with creating these levels as far as, Marine Tech 1, Marine Tech 2, having somebody go through the apprenticeship program and go from that to a journeyman and be able to have that career path forward with some more kind of set goals and targets and things like that. So, that's a big part of what we need to do, because across the industry, even our titles are really vague. They are. Dock Master, which has to be the coolest name of any job in the world. It is, but the Dock Master at one marina is the senior dock staff, is a seasonal position, probably, a college kid. And at another marina, the docks, the dock master is in charge of 1,000 slips and is, a very lucrative full-time year-round position. But we use the same titles interchangeably across the industry. I'm sure you saw that in your time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and I think one of the challenges we saw at Rhode Island Marine Trades Association always was when it comes down to funding training, and you're trying to pull down federal or state funding, if there's no nationalized credential or something to show, a badge or whatever it is, if there's nothing to show that the industry doesn't need it, it's harder to get that funding. It's harder to pull it down and federally. Well, and speaking like even thinking about high schools and CTEs, career techs, right? In order to get Perkins funds, you have to showcase that that money is invested into that young person, and there's a credential at the end or a clear and dynamic pathway towards that. So it's really difficult. It puts the boating industry, again, this is the boating industry, it puts you behind the 8 ball in getting talent, in actually promoting it, to be able to include, to get CTE programming, all of that. It has a ripple effect. And it's much more challenging to attract young people when they don't know they have that career ladder or that badging or that credentialing, or that they're working towards something. What was that? You said scaffolding. Yeah, there's no scaffolding. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, unless any of you want to comment on that little bit. Because I do want to get us to question and answer, but I want to, so there's a guy named Dr. Wallace Nichols who wrote a book, and it's called The Blue Mind. And it really kind of goes into the science behind why people that work around water, on water, near water, and it also includes just sort of outdoors sometimes too, why they're happier than other people. And so I kind of wanted to hear what you all thought about that. And I'll start with Steve.
Huh.
You always have the privilege of really getting to know the young people who participate in the Fab Newport programming. How do young people respond to the activities you do in or around the water, in or on or around?
They like being outside. I mean, I think as human beings, we all belong outside more. But I think a lot of young people don't know how to get outside anymore for a variety of different reasons. There's a fear, just, I don't think families let their kids roam the way kind of that I did when maybe you guys did when you were young. So I think, but
What
I
about
mean,
the kids that are on the surfboards? How do they feel?
they love it.
Yeah.
And when you're surfing, you're fully focused, right? So, you're not thinking about anything else and your phone is on the beach. So,
Good point.
yeah. So, I mean, I just think,
Yeah.
I think as human beings, most of us are happier when we're outside. And I start every day by jumping in the ocean. I'm from June 1st through September 30th. So, and even like today, I was thinking, oh, it's going to be a long day. But I know I got to drag my butt down there and jump in because I know I'll feel better.
You'll feel better.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Joe, let me hear about your blue mind and your blue family. Tell everyone about that.
So kind of the same thing, I just think it's about freedom, the freedom people feel when you're on the water. That's sports were definitely never my thing. That was, if my kids have any athletic prowess whatsoever, if they end up with any, it's from my wife.
Yeah.
It is absolutely not for me. And so, but being able to get out of school and, I was fortunate enough to grow up somewhere you could ride a bike across town to get down to the docks. And, getting on the water just has that sense of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it goes right along with getting outside, getting away from things when you're out there on a little skiff, whatever, fishing on your own after school. You're focused on that.
Mm-hmm.
All that other stuff kind of goes away. And
Stress
so,
reduction.
that's what, with my kids, with my daughter is 1 and my son is almost 5. And that's kind of, what we're working on with them. And they've grown up on the boats and fishing and hanging around the docks, which is also self-serving for me because I don't want to go to soccer tournaments every weekend. I have friends who do that. That looks like hell.
Yeah.
So,
Put a pole in that
so
kid's
my
hand.
wife has already gone. I'm going to tell you, I've already got an old skiff for us to fix up together. I'm going to win. What do you want, a tennis racket or a boat?
Yeah.
I have a plan to just keep these kids on the water so I don't have to spend my weekends at tournaments. But I think it's a good path, and it's fun to be outside and be
Yeah.
free.
Yep. Stress less. Yeah. Brian, how does being near the water play into the students that are attracted to Roger Williams?
Hugely.
Yeah. You have a beautiful campus.
And working or coming to school, when you come up over the Mount Hope Bridge and then the campus is right there, there's just a calmness that I think our students find. We have the number 2 sailing program, collegiate sailing program in the country, 2
Yeah.
years in a row. And some people may not know, and it's open to the public. We have close to a half-mile crushed shell path along the waterfront. It's a CRMC projected 20-acre zone. And you have a horrible exam. You're not sure about what's happening in your life. Our students will walk the path. Our campus security has issues with the path at night. That's a different presentation. But you have that sense. You're in a classroom. You had Zoom courses during the pandemic, but then you can walk and be in marshland and near the waterfront. We have a research vessel, and one of our classes goes out on a boat into the bay, and the students just thrive in that environment. So you're not taking a van to the waterfront to sail as you would at another university.
true.
All of our residence halls touch the bay. So half of our student residence hall rooms wake up and see the bay. And so it attracts a student who feels that connection and choose to not have an urban campus. There's benefits of urban, rural campuses, but the students we attract are like it matters. And it's sort of a tipping point factor. They find schools that they can afford, that have the majors that they want, and then location wins.
Yep.
And ocean wins.
Before I started working in the marine industry full time, my office was at a boatyard, and every day I'd drive into the boatyard, park my car, and the guys in the yard would be, operating a travel lift or whatever they were doing, bottom painting, and they'd all be like, "Hey, Wendy, how you doing? It's a great day. Nice to see you." And I mean, every day they were that positive, that excited, and I just said, you know what? I need to work in this industry. Everybody is happy in this industry. So it was exciting to see that Blue Mind book and to hear you guys' stories. All right, I'm going to open it up to, look at that.
Oh, 12 seconds.
12 seconds.
Oh my
We
God.
said 45 minutes. It's 12 seconds. Awesome. I'm going to open it up to questions, however anybody would like to ask. Molly has the microphone because this is being videotaped, so it'd be helpful. Come on, really? We really answered all the questions you ever had about blue economy and blue jobs.
Hello. I can break the ice.
Thank you.
So, what are the components of the blue economy in Newport? And to be more specific, okay, we are talking about marine trades. I think you are talking about boats and marine industry, making boats and things like that. There are fisheries as well in Newport. We don't know how it's going to be in the future for them because we have the offshore wind in front of us. So I would like to see your perspective about what kind of blue jobs you see in the future in Newport, because Newport is a touristy city. And I think they are going to be some kind of conflicts, depend on the type of industry, blue jobs that are coming in the way. So I would like to know for starters,
That's good.
what is that?
So that, just so that I'm clear, it's what types of blue jobs are there in the Newport area
In industry.
and industries? And what it's going to look like? Oh, in this area. Mhm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a tourist city.
Yep.
So how
Yeah.
we are going to combine all the things from your perspective.
Wow.
Could I add one? I think, Lola, that you're also thinking about sustainability,
Yeah.
right? Because we haven't really touched on that. So, I mean,
Go for it.
I think, we think about the blue economy, and I think that we're trying to figure out what are we going to do for the next 100 years. We have some serious
Mhm.
challenges that we face. Humanity faces some
Mhm.
challenges. So, so I think, I'm no economist, but if we put young people in the right position and let them invent opportunities, right?
Mhm.
But if we just want to keep chugging cars down America's Cup, like, how many more cars can we stuff down America's Cup Avenue and Thames Street, right? But, or is there going to be a more, I think ferries present a tremendous like water transportation. We had a group of kids took the ferry, they biked to the ferry, and they took the ferry from Newport to Providence and then biked back along the Bristol bike path. But you know what? How do you get your bike? How do you get 10 bicycle riders from Bristol to Newport? Like, why can't we do that? Right? And think of like what that would do for the economy in Rhode Island if all of a sudden there was a bike path that went around the whole state. And you know what? Maybe there's a ferry that can connect somebody who doesn't want to ride the whole bike path. But they can do it in Boulder. They can do it in New York. They can do it in other countries, but not here. So
Well,
we
and-
got to use our imagination, Lola. I think that's one thing we got to do, and bring more people to the table to have kinds of conversations about the things that we would like to do.
And to address the question around what types of jobs, right? I mean, it's when I tell people so I'm from the recreational boating industry, and when I talk to people about what types of jobs are in it, I tell them, think about a cruise ship. Everything that it took to build that ship, to pull all the materials in, to design it, to run it, to fix it, to operate everything on it. So, I mean, blue jobs can be anything. But I will say that I learned from a group in Washington State that is doing a very large blue economy effort themselves, and it's a very interesting. They have a great website to learn from. They say if it's wet, it's blue. So if the business itself is connected to the water in any way, or the job itself is, then that's what's considered the blue economy. The short answer that I will give you, though, is I think it's largely undefined, other than, being wet, because it is energy, it is anything transportation, it is hospitality and tourism, it's technology, it's things not created yet, even, so.
It's almost hard to work in Newport and not be
In the-
in some facet connected.
Not get wet?
Not be part of the blue economy
Yeah.
somehow. And that's, there's a lot more diversity in the type of roles that are available in it now than I think people have realized. It's not just working, strictly in the technical side of a boatyard. That's where my heart is. But there's a lot of roles within HR, within hospitality, within workforce that are all connected with the blue economy. And that's one thing that I tout a lot when I've spoken a few times at IRIS, where there's students coming out with these technical backgrounds, which are phenomenal. But no matter what, that's going to be useful information for them. But they may go work in a marina and find out that, it's great that they have this technical knowledge. It helps them understand their job. But they just love being connected with the customers and planning events and going that route. And that's there's a lot of opportunities in that. I always joke around that I'm just bad enough at every role in a boatyard to be a manager. Because if I was that good at anything one of those things, that's what they would have had me do. But I was just bad enough at everything to have to manage all of it.
I love that. Yeah, probably gonna use that.
Can I-
And I would add, the sense of what blue initiatives or a regional effort looks like really depends on the region. We have a couple faculty at Roger Williams who've been studying this, and if you're in the British Virgin Islands, it's all about mangroves. There's shores protected by mangroves, so you have to bring mangroves and sustainable folks into a conversation about sea level rise and tidal issues there. Venice grapples with tourism, and if you go to Italy, you're thinking about ecotourism and blue economy in a very different way. So having the conversations here to say what are the ingredients around Newport that are the right things to bring together. So Rhode Island has a state coral now, and Roger Williams URI researchers are doing research on plastic impact, microplastics, and issues of recycling. So chemical engineering, environmental engineering jobs can be blue and wet if you want to study plastics. And you
Right.
can say, I care about the blue economy and I'm really good at science, so I want to develop products that can degrade better if litter happens, or I want to get into policy work and sue the companies that are putting stuff into the bay.
Exactly.
There's so any way that you start to think, and that's what we want our students to do, to say, I care about the criminal justice system, I care about the ocean, and we have amazing assets here, from the history of sailing, from Bristol down on through, and America's Cup and Herreshoff to Iris to sailing to ecotourism. That's a key part for us regionally. But to all move together and have high school students see career paths and stay here, not leave the state, and all kind of move together, that's how a region gets sort of an identity. So you think about Silicon Valley. They said it's technology, and the state incentives, private companies, the universities kind of made Silicon Valley. So these blue efforts across the country, and what I think the state's really trying to do is say, what is that distinctive place? And I've called it like giving the ocean state an ocean strategy.
Yeah,
It's
nice.
what it's about for us in such a key way.
Say one final word, and that the whole point of this series is to show people all that's happening around here, okay, and to kind of break down what is the blue economy that's still being identified. I mean, they're still trying to figure out a definition for it. But I mean, Newport specifically, we have all of the sectors. We've got defense and shipping and ports and marine trades and tourism, and offshore wind. We have every sector right here. That's why I think it's so exciting to learn about it and learn from the expert panelists, because Newport isn't just restaurants and tourism. I mean, that's an incredible, important part of where we live, but there is so much more right here. So it's about spreading awareness and getting people excited and engaged and curious and wanting to learn more. I will say next week's session is about the ecosystem. So it really is, visually you're going to be able to see people, programs, and places around the state that are doing just this and talking about it. So come next week, and I think you'll get a deeper definition. But I love how you all are focusing on the youth, because it really does all start with the youth and getting people excited. So thank you. Any other questions?
I think that one was a whopper, though.
Yeah, that was a juicy one.
First one was a whopper.
Hi, my name is Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Thank you for this presentation. It's been really great to listen to. One of the things I'm curious about is what educational resources are out there for blue economy, blue tech, whatever it might be, whether it's blogs, podcasts, publications, universities that are leading the way. Like, where would you recommend to go get additional information if there's anything you've really enjoyed?
Go for it.
There's a lot. I mean, the short answer is Google. And I joke with that, but when we've been starting to do a lot more in the state of Rhode Island, Roger Williams has a lot of faculty that are connected internationally in international efforts. You can Google Blue Economy Vietnam. You can Google Blue Economy Malaysia, Blue Economy Ireland, and there are white papers and there's so much happening in this space that you start to just say, I had no idea. Like Halifax and Nova Scotia is doing amazing work. It all looks different. They don't have what Newport has. So if you're interested at sort of the industry level, or like who's defining blue economy, those are places to see what regional efforts look like, is to just pick a region you're interested in and learn. And I've learned a lot there, and we found some university partners in parts of the world that have just been fascinating for us to start experimenting with. The United Nations website is a great place to go, that they have their 17, the UN has like their development goals. And so when they're talking about life above and underwater and the sustainable goals that they've developed, a lot of blue economy efforts are tied to responding to the UN. And so from Google, I would say the UN is a great place to start. And then into that, so many industries I would just rattle off. There's a lot of great readings. Blue Mind. There's a great book called The Water Will Come, which is all about the sea level rise impact of industries and thinking about coastal development. So yeah, I work at a college, so if you want something to read, I can tell you some stuff to read. So yeah.
And there's a couple podcasts that take place here in Rhode Island. There's one about the blue economy.
It's called the Blue Economy
Yeah.
Podcast, and it is a Rhode Island. It's great. It's
Yeah.
only 2 years in,
Yeah.
and they're fabulous. And again, it's the people, the programs, and the places for Rhode Island. It's great. It's a good starting point.
Brian, what's the one that the marine one that our friend that Evan was on?
I think it was that one.
Okay.
Is Chris Heaton, is it Newport Nautical? I think they were doing one too.
Oh, probably. That sounds
Maybe.
right. Newport Nautical. That does sound
Yeah.
right.
But there is a coalition of leaders in the state. URI being Research Foundation leading the charge there, who are bringing together different organizations and institutions, education and private sector and everything, who are all talking about this and where we need to go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Willa. I just wanted to say the Blue Economy podcast, and also Our Epic Ocean is a podcast, kind of more about, kind of ocean issues, but there's some great, kind of national leaders in the ocean space. Hi, Wendy. And I wanted to, hear your perspective on, do you think Rhode Island can be a leader, as a state, at a state level, in the blue economy? And, what do you think we're doing really well? What do you think, are areas for us at a state level to improve upon?
I think at the state level, I think we are a leader.
Yeah.
I can say, again, small New England, mindset. I wouldn't say I'm terribly worldly and traveled, but I made the pilgrimage from Connecticut over the state line, but for that reason, if you want to work in the marine industry and you're from the New England area, Rhode Island's the best place to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it has the most focus on the industry. I think it has the strongest Marine Trades Association. And I think that's pretty well recognized. Not that we should rest on our laurels or anything, but I do think Rhode Island is viewed as a leader, at least, in this area.
Yeah, and I think, we have a bunch of assets, and one of the biggest ones is that we're so small, and people say that all the time, but it's true. It's so easy to call all of the partners together, though I think that there's opportunity for more of that, especially as we figure out more what the blue economy is. I had one more thing. What was that other part of your question? I wonder.
Yeah, just what we're doing, can we be a national leader?
Yeah.
What we're doing now, areas.
Yeah, go for it.
So
Hopefully I can remember.
the blue economy conversations we've had lately and that Roger Williams has been brought into have come about because of a federal grant challenge, right? And so the Build Back Better regional challenge is what we've aligned the state towards this blue economy effort with. And it's put people in the room I don't think that have been in the room before. So Wendy said, there's great assets here. Yes. But have all the assets kind of moved together? Have all the assets connected together? There's a different great book to read called Co-opetition. So we're competing against each other, but we're also cooperating. So how does higher ed work together? We have great partnerships with URI for federal research. And if we together can get a grant, great. We have amazing champions in Senator Reid, Senator Whitehouse. And so federal support, state support, industry, and then just putting up a sign that broadcasts what you can see locally, but say, if you want to start a business, if you want to innovate in this type of space, come to our state. And I'll get the exact numbers wrong, but there's something, Maine to Florida, there are just over 600 oyster farms, and there's over 80 in Rhode Island. Right. So if you want to be a beacon for oyster farms and oyster cultivation and research, it's here. So those connections, I think you can look and see all the ingredients are there, but it takes state aligning dollars towards it, getting the federal appropriations aligned towards it, universities offering the education. So if family moves here, students see this clear pipeline towards a job and don't come and then leave to get a job and go over the borders to those other states we won't name.
That's what I was going to say. Honestly, it's about unifying the effort, figuring out where the common threads are, figuring out how we market it properly, figuring out how this, how they all feed off of each other, what they can do together combined, all of that.
Yeah.
And I think, we have that, and we have this incubator going on here too, all this opportunity. So then where's the leveling? How do you connect and also respect each entity's size, capability? How do you unify the effort? I think that's sort of the next question, right?
Yep.
At least in my mind.
Thank you. I have two folks here. This is Christine Smith from URI, and she is the Director of Special Projects, part of URI Foundation, that coalition that I was talking about. So I think she's going to make some comments.
Well, yes, and Molly had asked if I wanted to say a few words, but I can't say them better than Brian and Wendy just did. So there is a real effort, and I know Commerce. Is Commerce here? Okay. And I know Paul Harden was here from the SBDC, but anyway, so there is the effort afoot to bring everyone together to go after federal funds that are available. We should hear later this month, early next month. Hopefully, it's super competitive. There are 60 applications, only 20 were going to be funded, but it was to do exactly that, pull the threads together, put together some sort of an organizational structure so that we could work together as a community to build some new infrastructure, do workforce training programs, bring in underrepresented communities that might not otherwise be able to reap all the benefits of the economic opportunity that will be coming to us because of the blue economy, because of just not only the emerging offshore wind industry, but also our legacy industries and fisheries and tourism. So more to come, hopefully. I wanted to absolutely thank Brian and all of our other partners in this coalition. We had over 130 letters of support, and it ranged from the Girl Scouts, who have a badge, a Mariner badge, all the way to the AFL-CIO, who is very much interested in working with us and creating family-sustaining jobs in the industry. So more to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine.
Thanks. Hi, my name's Bill, and I'm a dock master.
What does it mean?
It's actually sort of true. But two quick things. One is on the podcast question. There's another podcast called the American Blue Economy Podcast, and it's a guy, a retired Rear Admiral named Tim Gallaudet. Dave, you're familiar with it, right? I mean, it's I have not personally listened to it, but one of our board members is very familiar with it and has been a guest on it. So that's something to check out as well. I think we know that over half of all jobs in the U.S. that could be defined as STEM jobs are held by people without a four-year college degree. How do you think the blue economy, even though we actually can't define it, in Rhode Island and also particularly in Newport, kind of stacks up against that? More or less same.
Is it not enough people are getting those jobs? Re-ask the question.
I guess what I'm wondering is, of all the jobs, sort of blue economy jobs in Rhode Island and specifically in Newport, do you think the more than half of them are ultimately held or going to be held by people without a how relevant do you think the four-year college degree is going to be as this thing grows in Rhode Island?
From a marina standpoint, I can say that, yeah, I love my degree. I think I've gotten a lot of value from it. I don't think my company would know if I had it or not. And I can't, other than just with personal conversations from being close friends with a lot of the people that I work with, most of the, the general managers and dock masters I work with, it's experiential. It's on the job. I don't know off the top of my head, to be completely honest, who has four-year degrees and who hasn't. So I think in certain positions, as I said, we're getting more, with a big company, there's more human resources and kind of, positions that exist with specific degree requirements or expectations. But I still think, the more vocational, the on-the-job training is still really relevant in our industry.
I think it's, go for
Yeah,
it.
and I would add, there's a little cart and horse to your question. Based on what industries come here, we need to listen to what degrees they need, right? I don't think Roger Williams can move towards saying we should enroll 500 more students because look, the blue economy's here. Mayflower Wind, Ørsted, if they say we need fabrication and manufacturing to crank out more propeller and wind turbines, and this is the credential they need, and you give us those and we'll hire them. Or if they say we need bachelor's degree students with engineering and they need to understand X, Y, and Z because they're going to do this, or a robotics company, or what Raytheon needs. So I think industry and higher ed communicating better is really what's critical. Is what we're trying to do. We haven't historically, higher ed overall has not done that well, and that's why it's getting critiqued so much now. Because it's like, I got this degree and now I'm paying back all these student loans and I have a job that's only making this much money. I didn't need the degree, and I wish someone told me earlier. So I think the more we do that, and we're at a time of growth where we're seeing industries coming, and it's like, what do you need? And then we can tailor. So I think it's not, a college degree is good for you. You're going to take it. You're going to like it. I think we need to see what this next stretch does. And is it going to be more towards ecotourism? Is it going to be aquaculture? Is it going to be biotech? And different industries are going to scream, you need, advanced degrees in engineering to really help these companies in these sectors. And we may play a role in one way. New England Tech is going to play a role in a very different way than us. Brown plays a different role, So small state, but higher ed with us, we go from Ivy League school to technical to community college really well. And we all have a distinct role and niche that we can play. that it's going to take, what companies are coming here to have us kind of call and response to it. I think that's how, if that helps your question.
I want to add briefly to that.
Yeah.
Ask like an 11 and 12-year-old what their favorite class is, and they'll often say science. I love science, right? Because they're doing things hands-on, and then you get to high school and the curriculum gets very narrow and it gets cookbooky. And so if we had high school kids earning credentials in a hands-on, science curriculum that was connected to the blue economy, we'd have a lot more kids who could show up at the dock or wherever it is and be ready to start learning because they have the right attitude, they're engaged, and then if they want to go back and get a further degree and advance their careers, they can do that. But I think we have to got to get in there and start doing this stuff.
Hi, my name is Dave Altunian. I'm the Vice Provost at Salve Regina for graduates. So I want to say your answer was great, Brian. But I also want to say I spent 35 years in a tech career. My first 10 years without a degree. There's a difference between getting a job and a career. And so I really had a challenge until I got my undergrad, and then the career opened up. I think your answer about the higher ed is really important. But we were just at Dell in Austin about 2 weeks ago, meeting with their leadership. They said they prefer hiring from liberal arts universities because they know how to solve problems. It isn't the entry level that's the problem. It's the management. It's the 5 years and 10 years. What does your degree help? And I'm sure you say, I know I have help from it today. It's not the job. It's where you are in your career that the degrees matter. So I just want to add that.
Thanks, David.
Thanks. I'm Marian Larned, and I wanted to ask you, when you asked the question, how can the state help? That's a great question. I feel like people bragged about what they're doing, but didn't answer the question. And if you have any say-so or any opportunity to influence high school guidance counselors and high school teachers and superintendents, it's the public education system that's not at the table. After school is important. And experiential learning is great, but there's roadblocks, especially in Rhode Island, in the public school system. And the guidance department channels everyone to a 4-year degree. I mean, that's the prize. So they don't have a high regard for community college, associate's degrees, certificate, any of that. So, we find with the young people that we work with, too often it's just, definitely, and go into debt and then get a job you don't really like so you can pay it off, and your family's in debt, the economy goes under. So the most important thing that we can teach is, and there's no remedial education, as we found nationally, for guidance counselors to understand about the transition to a sustainable economy, whether it's blue or green, that there's no incentive for them. The incentive is how many kids can they get to a 4-year college. So if you have anything that you could say to the Department of Education.
I just want to clarify, I don't work.
Well, since you asked the question, when we offer that opportunity to the kids, if they ask the question, then it's on them to find somebody to champion it, because it's a huge problem, especially in Rhode Island. I'll let you talk about that, though. She's on the school board.
Hi, my name is Ann, and I'm not going to put myself out there as an expert because I'm not. But what I do know a lot about is learning. And an organization that I work with right now and my business partner are working on developing something that may begin to address some of those concerns. We've made it through hurdle number 1, but there's a bigger one yet ahead of us for funding. And that is, we made it past the ask the NSF if we can apply for money. We got past that hurdle. Now we're applying for money. But our intent is to be able to provide a program. We happen to have chosen the sailing, and we're using the word ecosystem, meaning big ecosystem, and STEM learning, STEAM actually, but we're starting with the scientist and developing a learning program that's using 3 things: metacognition, which is learning to learn, short version. It's a lot more complicated, but learning to learn is good enough. So that you can develop some skills to develop what we call adaptive career intelligence, which is how you take what you're learning in the classroom and say, oh my God, that might be useful. Instead of when am I ever going to use this again, which was certainly my response to some things too, like when am I ever going to use trigonometry? I liked it, but I don't use it. I do use algebra and geometry still, but I don't use it, right? And generally speaking. So what we're hoping to do as a student, ultimately a student piece of it and an educator piece, this is a long-term project, mind you, that will be in virtual reality that starts to help people learn. And oh, by the way, you don't have to be from Rhode Island. You don't even have to be from an ocean state of any kind. You could be on the Great Lakes, or you could be in the boonies, somewhere where there's no water except that little brook or creek or whatever you call it where you live. And with the hopes that we can address that. So I would say that if there are any of you who have feedback for me, we'd like it.
Thank you.
How's everybody doing? This has been fantastic. My name's Tim from the Bristol Town Council. I wanted to know what at the local level, at the town level, we could do better to make sure that Bristol takes off in the blue economy. I know the Harris Sheriff Museum is doing a great job spearheading that, but we want to make sure it's very, very successful. So I just wanted to know your perspective of what are things that we could be doing better. Thank you.
Well, speaking from a Bristol perspective, it's the having all pieces move together, and I think at a local level, it's convening, to see where a pressure point is. If a certain company's trying to grow, but housing prices are an issue, what can a town do? If you're not attracting talent for companies that are trying to start because the school systems aren't strong, the school systems may need to move. So like looking at it, and I think the word ecosystem is starting to be used a lot, but that's what it takes. It's like this one piece is really great, but can't do it alone. It's connected to these other things. So are you a destination? You've got a bike path, you've got a quality of life, you have businesses that are moving, strong schools, and I've got a university nearby that we can have interns, we can hire students from. So companies won't move to a region if there isn't talent that they're going to be able to hire, So all the pieces that are here and here do need to move together. And so I think that the local level, and it's what at the state level Rhode Island is doing, is convening these conversations. And Newport and Innovate Newport, it's about convening. So Innovate Newport is convening. What can Bristol do to convene? Rhode Island's convening. And some of the Rhode Island conversations about the blue economy cut down to Groton and Electric Boat and the Coast Guard Academy and Mystic Aquarium and to Woods Hole for research in the blue economy, right? So you get it right, and then you expand and expand because you're always part of the next thing. But it starts in the backyard. So I think that sense of a local conversation about how do we fit in, what voice do we have, what do we bring to this table, and then you make sure you're sitting at the next table. So that's just a quick answer. I think that's what any region can do. And we try to do that within a campus. How does the law school was doing great things, but law wasn't talking to our aquarists and our marine science folks. And the best conversation I've seen so far is we have engineering faculty that care about wind energy. We have aquarists who care about fishing lanes, and the law school's there to talk about fishing lanes and shipping rights and power lines that are going to need to come to the shore for wind farms. And no one wants those power lines to go through their town to connect, to go up to, a power plant and convert to energy. So how do you have that conversation about how those pieces come together? And if you don't, then that company's not going to move here. They're not going to invest here. So we have to move together. And I think it starts local, state, regional to do that.
But you have an incredible perspective on looking at that broad ecosystem. Just the few conversations I've had with you, I think getting somebody who can see the big picture, because I think so many of us are just working so hard in our little space, right? We're just in the grind. but you have to be able to look at the big picture, connect people together, keep the conversations going, move it along. So.
Yeah, and it's just a quick little secret and plug. 11 years before coming to Roger Williams, I've worked in Greater Cleveland. And if you think about Cleveland, you think about the Cleveland Clinic, and the medical ecosystem in Cleveland grew up around the Cleveland Clinic. The hospitals, the medical schools, the universities getting people into healthcare IT. So IT and computer science students working on health and medical records. And then Cover My Meds moves in as one of the largest online prescription deliverers as a fully online company. And it started to create, so I saw how that happened, but it wouldn't have happened if the mayor of Cleveland didn't change the tax incentives to build a medical mart, to invest in, surgical equipment coming in to support the Cleveland Clinic, and the next step and the next step, and there you go. So I can see it here. It's right on the edge of that type of a regional collective effort, and that's just what I'm passionate about. It's like higher ed isn't just an ivory tower, and it has to be a part of this to move it all forward.
I want to say, just to encapsulate sort of what you both said, was it's really about integration at every level and everything you do. I mean, and it would be, I spent the better part of 10 years working out of the Bristol Marine building, and am very integrated with I understand Bristol, very well, especially Andy Tiska being on the town council for a time and that sort of thing too. So I understand Bristol. And it has everything it needs to be that ecosystem that, similar to how Newport has everything, right? It needs, but it's about integrating across what your job as a councilman touches. So it's at the town level, it's at the educational level. I don't know if you still have it, but I know Rhode Island Marine Trades Association worked with Bristol to replicate Newport's 4th grade sailing program at Harrishoff Marine Museum. Every 4th grader gets sailing. It's not that they need to be a professional sailor when they grow up or even work in the marine industry. It's comfort level on the water. It's understanding that there are careers, or they can get on the water. It's STEM. It's a lot of different things. And the other thing I would say is, to your point about bringing people together and convening and talking, what's your commitment level? What is the town's level of commitment to this initiative, and how do you get everybody on board? And how do you make it their idea?
Well said.
I think we are running out of time.
Yeah, maybe one more question? No?
If not, I would love to hear just one takeaway from each of you guys. What did you take away from today, whether it was from each other or from the audience? You want to start, Brian?
With everything we've done over the last couple of years, a takeaway for me is high school needs to be more at the table. So I really appreciate that comment. We've really focused on higher ed's role and then the school and the programming, but that's my takeaway.
Nice. Steve?
I'm going to look Brian up and figure out how we can get some of his credentials, hooked up into what our kids love to do, and build that and a stronger connection to Roger Williams. And we're going to get some boat rides too.
Yeah, that's good. You've got the connections now.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I ran the boats for Save the Bay forever. Now I maintain them.
All right.
So I've got the keys.
Yeah, yeah. Nice.
I can see trial them all day long. But I guess the same thing on the industry side is that, we've been hyper focused, I think, for a long time on trade schools, which is a great feeder for us. But we also have to, be partnering with people at earlier levels to, help provide mentorship and get the interest, for the students to go that route and, see it as a viable option.
Yeah.
So much similar to, to your point earlier, it's not only, I think we're coming to the table a little too late.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to thank my esteemed panel of fellows who are just, they've always impressed me, but now you get to see it too. And thank you also, Molly, for inviting us today. It's very nice to be here.
Well, thank you all, Brian, Wendy, Steve and Joe, thank you for leading the conversation, and thank you for your great questions. I think we can all learn from each other. So as I said, next week is Blue Ecosystem. So the ecosystem in Rhode Island, you'll learn about the people, places, and programs, that coalition we were talking about. And then the final session is looking ahead. So it's really about strategy, how we move forward as a united front. I did forget to mention that Newport Craft Brewery sponsors these events all summer long. So I want to thank them. Hope you all got to enjoy a beer. If not, come next week and you can have one. But thanks for being here. Hope to see you next week and hope you're enjoying summer.
Thank you. Overeducated.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Wendy. Good
I
job.
really
It was
appreciate
either a motorcycle or a doctoral degree.
Yeah,
That was my
yeah.
life crisis moment.
Yeah.
So I went back to school.
Well, do you have a motorcycle now?
No.
Oh.